One thing you might need to do with the clips you've made for your science film is go in later on in the edit and color correct them to make sure the color is the same across the entire film. So let's have a look at how we do that in Davinci Resolve. I've got my clips in here already, and I'm going to go through them and I'm going to color correct them once they're in the timeline. And specifically this one here. So this one looks a little bit blue to me and looks a little bit dark. So I'm going to bring this down into the timeline, and we're going to color correct it. And that's something important to think about, is this is color correction, not color grading or stylizing in any way, not adding filters and things. So we want to color correct first, make it look like it did on the day before we go in then and add any kind of stylistic choices. So with this clip, you can see I kind of caught Tamara off guard and she looks up into the mountains stoically afterwards. And we're going to just change this to make it look natural. To do that, we're going to go to a different workspace. So down here in the bottom, we've got Media, Cut, Edit, Fusion, and then Color. And Davinci Resolve is actually probably the best color grading tool in the world. There's a reason that everyone uses it to color grade. In fact, it started off its life like that. But we're going to try and keep it simple because it can get quite complex. So we're just going to use some very simple parts of this. We're going to change the color of it and then the brightness of it as well. And we can do that down the bottom down here. So these color wheels are different. These change the darkest parts, the mid parts, and then the brightest parts of this. And then this changes the entire thing. So if I change this wheel, for example, it'll change the entire image. And if I go back and forth on this, a good thing to do with all color correction tools is just go wild with them. It's non-destructive, so you won't damage anything, but just go back and forth and just see how it changes. You've got these color scopes down behind me down here. You can see how that changes, and you see it's changing the brightness of the entire thing up and then down again. So for this, all we're going to do is just change that brightness slightly, just bring it up slightly so it looks a little bit better. And then for these, I'm actually just going to leave these for now. You definitely can change these, and you can change these color wheels, change the colors of what's going on in here. So that's changing the colors of the mid-tones, the middle tones in there. If I double click it, it goes back to the center. This changes the colors of the brightest bits, and then I can double click it to go back to the middle. But what we're going to do is we're just going to change the white balance and the saturation. So for white balance, there's actually this one, which is temperature. If I go to the left, it makes it more blue. And if I go to the right, it makes it more orange. This is something you can try and get right in camera to begin with. So for temperature, one thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to ask Davinci actually to automate that, to get it right in camera. So I can click on this one over here. If I hover over it, it says white balance. And then luckily, Tamara's got on a nice white helmet. So I can go to that, click it, and that's actually pretty close to what it would naturally be on the day. It's changing the tint slightly as well. And if I want to make it's looking a bit flat to me at the moment. So if I want to make it a bit more punchy, add some more dark into the dark areas and brights into the bright areas, I can change the contrast there as well. So you can see what that's doing. If I slide from left to right, you can see in the scopes behind me, there's just crushing everything in there. So these scopes, you want to make sure it doesn't ever go over this top part. Just up here, you want to hit there at max and then there at max as well. So I'm going to add a little bit more contrast into this, make the darks a bit darker and the lights. So I bring that together to make the lights and the darks a little bit closer. So that's looking good to me now. That looks a little bit more like it did on the day. If I want to check what it looked like before, I can bypass color grades, go back to what it was like beforehand and see the changes that I've made to it up there. So that's what it looked like before, and then that's what it looked like after. There is so much more to Davinci Resolve when it comes to color. You can spend a long time kind of trying to get to grips with it. But the temperature, the saturation, things like that, that's what you're going to mostly be dealing with when it comes to color correction. And it's always better to do it in camera to begin with if you can. So set your white balance up on the day and set up your exposure on the day to make sure it's just right. And get it ready in camera so you don't have to mess about later on in the color part of Davinci Resolve. But if you do need to, if you're in a pinch, you got it wrong on the day, which everyone does, then that's how you do it. So you color correct in Davinci Resolve.